Betting preview for the divisional round Saturday. Specifically, we're going to go over the Houston Texans versus Kansas City Chiefs and the Washington Commanders and the Detroit Lions. Try and find some winners. A great weekend of football back-to-back. Really, the divisional round, I think, is arguably the best weekend of pure football. I mean, you got some really, really good teams playing against each other. Huge matchups. Obviously, we have Josh Allen and Lamar. Even Washington, Detroit's a fun game. Houston, KC. A lot of the times the wild card can be blowouts, and then the conference championship game, you only have 2 games. So, our conference championship week. So, this is a blend of a lot of games, really good teams, really good matchups, and I think there's some really good situational spots for bets, specifically player props. So, and again, we're going to focus on Houston, Kansas City, Washington, Detroit. So, let's start with Houston, KC. This is probably my favorite game as far as player props, because what I love to do is obviously try and get like a game script going. In the playoffs, usually you can do that easier because teams are way more consistent. It's hard in the regular season to be like, oh yeah, the Raiders are going to do this every week because the Raiders are so inconsistent, the coaching and the game planning. Same with the Saints, a lot of teams like that. So, but with KC, Houston, Washington, Detroit, I think I know kind of what we're going to see here. So let's go real quick on the odds board. Big numbers, I'm not getting involved in the side. I would lean the under in Houston, KC. They're both under teams, and there's supposed to be some wind. I think it's like 20-mile-an-hour winds, but the numbers moved like crazy. If we look at, we got bet stamp here. So the total has moved to 41.5. So we're kind of late on that. So I probably won't play it. But if I had to play something on the total, it would be the under. All right, so let's get into the game script and let's get into the player props. What's going to happen here is KC is going to dominate the interior of Houston's offensive line, okay? Houston is not going to be able to run the football. All right, so the first thing I like is Joe Mixon rushing yards under. Joe Mixon is going to have to pass block. We're assuming that Kansas City is going to be up. We're assuming Houston, 1, won't be able to run. 2, will have to abandon the run because they're playing catch-up. So both of those equal Joe Mixon under yards. ESPN bet 59.5. I don't know anyone that uses ESPN bet, but if you do, take it. Beyond that, your best number looks like it's at Caesars, 56.5. I would definitely take that. In the same idea, all right, so Steve Spagnuolo is going to be really good at taking away Nico Collins. All right, he's going to funnel everything in. And if he's doing that, and we already deduced that C.J. Stroud is going to be under a lot of pressure, who does that equal a big game for? Dalton Schultz. Okay, Dalton Schultz is the guy I'm looking at here. So 3.5 at Bet Rivers. And FanDuel, minus 182, I wouldn't play that. But 167 at Bet Rivers. But I'll tell you this, 4.5 plus money is not crazy because I think Dalton Schultz could be one of those games where, he ends up, you look up and all of a sudden he's got 8 catches, where it's just check down after check down. He is going to be the guy who gets these check downs. He is going to be the guy who's running routes. And like I mentioned earlier with Joe Mixon, Dalton Schultz is not a pass blocking tight end. So he will not be asked to stay in pass protection. He will be running routes. And if Stroud has to get the ball out quick, which we know he's going to have to, then Schultz will be the guy. So love this. Love this play. I've already taken this play. Love the play. All right, if we go to the Kansas City side of things. So if we assume KC will be up in the game and they're already they're kind of a slower paced offense nowadays anyways, I like this guy right here, Isaiah Pacheco, over. Now, I got it at 41.5 on FanDuel. Best number still out there by far. It's already ticking up at 45.5 at some places, 44.5 at DK. So if you can get 41.5 at FanDuel, go ahead and do that. I like his over 41.5. I think KC will look to run the football. I think they'll be up at home. Pacheco's rested. No reason not to run the football. Okay, so his rushing attempts prop is 10.5. Okay, so we're looking for 11, 12, 13 carries. and we should get this, I think. So I like that one a whole hell of a lot. So Houston, as far as if you're looking at anything else, I haven't taken this, but I've looked at it, is C.J. Stroud rushing attempts and rushing yards. This will be a theme throughout the playoffs, is quarterbacks run now. That's just part of the NFL. The NFL is all quarterbacks running and taking over the game. Every single quarterback, even if they're not really known to run, seems to be able to scramble and get out of the pocket. I mean, Sam Darnold, I think, had like 4 carries for 20 yards in their loss last week. So even quarterbacks you wouldn't think to run are just taking off and going. And that's not even factoring in kneel downs and not even factoring in things like that. And we'll see that in the Washington game with Jaden Daniels, where the number just can't be high enough. Where if you look at like Lamar and Josh Allen, and if they want to score and if they are pushing the ball or playing from behind or whatever, they are going to take off and run. And 10-plus carries for these guys is absolutely nothing. I think Jaden Daniels had like 9 at halftime last week. Lamar Jackson, the first 5 plays of the game last week were all rush attempts. So we already talked about C.J. Stroud being under a ton of duress. So the Houston Texans offensive line is really bad. They gave up the third most sacks this season. Chicago was 1, Cleveland was 2, Houston was 3. Their interior is specifically bad, which is really bad news because the Kansas City Chiefs interior defensive line is really, really good. So there's going to be a ton of pressure up front. All right, so Stroud is going to have to make a decision of getting out of the pocket, rolling out, scrambling, or dump it off. That's how I see it happening. So if you believe that he's going to get out of the pocket and look to go, then I would look at his attempts, but I would also really look at the longest rush of 8.5. I love the longest rush props. Takes one time. You escape the pocket, you go. A lot of the times it's easier. Like if he has, so his yards prop is, let's just call it 15. All right. His rushing attempts is 3.5. Okay. We can all do the math. If he gets 3, that's 5 yards to carry. Okay. His longest rush is only 8.5. So he's not a running back, right? Like they don't average just like 4 yards a carry, 5 yards a carry. More than likely what happens is they clip one for like 10 yards, and then they have a couple of rushes where they're just trying to escape for like 1 or 2, 3 yards. So I like the longest rush. That's the angle I would get after. But I would also look at his attempts. Again, a kneel down saves you, things like that. So this is where I'm going in this game. Love the props. KC receiver-wise, one more. I like Marquise Brown. So if Derek Stingley we're assuming that he'll be on DeAndre Hopkins, something like that, then I like the idea of Marquise Brown. Hollywood Brown has played 2 games with the Chiefs. Both games, he's had like 7 or 8 targets. He's eclipsed this number in both games. His yards now, 40.5. You can get at Bet Rivers. It's ticked up a lot. It was like mid-30s, and all week it shot up. So I like this. I guess you could be concerned about the wind potentially, so keep an eye on that if it's 30-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, but he's certainly going to get targeted. He is certainly a big play threat. So out of all the Chiefs receivers, I like Marquise Brown quite a bit. If you expect Stingley may be taking away DeAndre, and Travis Kelce's Travis Kelce, so they'll be focused on him. So that kind of leaves Marquise Brown to kind of feast. And because he hasn't played that much this year, the numbers are a bit deflated, I assume. And the game script isn't really there. It is one of those bets we always joke around about where it's like you take Pacheco's yards and Brown's yards, can't lose both. And it's kind of true. Like if the game script is KC has to score, has to move the ball, this is great for Brown. If KC is dominating the game, then that's great for Pacheco. And where Brown could hit regardless, So it's one of those things where you kind of have a security blanket if you take it with Pacheco. But so let's go ahead and go to the night game. Okay, so again, game script tells us 2 things. High scoring game, both teams are going to score. It's indoors, and it's going to be a blowout. All right, so that's just what the numbers are telling you. Numbers are telling you Detroit wins big in a high scoring game, and we know it's indoors. All right, so first let's go to Washington. What does that mean for Washington? That means they're going to have to be throwing the ball. That means they're going to have to drop back a lot. If they're dropping back a lot, we have to feel good about Jaden Daniels running. And it's one of those things where, yeah, it is absolutely chalky. I'm not splitting the atom here, but 9.5, I mean, how do you not play it? I played it 9.5 at BetMGM, so minus 155, 9.5, but it's just one of those things where this honestly could hit in the first half. I mean, it's just going to be nonstop Jaden Daniels running. They do that anyways, whether it's design runs, whether he takes off. Washington isn't really a deep play explosive offense. They're more of a matriculate down the field, really short chunk plays. They're totally willing to have Daniels run 3-4 yards a clip, get down the field. You know, if it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, it's going to be Daniels. Even if it's 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 3, it's going to be Daniels. So I just don't see I don't see a world where he plays the entire game and he does not get 10 carries. It just doesn't make sense to me. I really think you could go longest rush, not 19.5, but I think you go, that's because it's 20 yards is his, that's why it says 19.5. But 15.5, I think you go longest rush. I think you go rushing yards. I think you go rush attempts. And what is the situation where he's not running the ball? This is what got them there. This is how they win games, especially if they're behind. If they are coming back in this game, it's going to be Jaden Daniels' legs. That's just how they perform. That's how they play. So I love his rush attempts, love his rushing yards, love his longest rush. As far as Detroit is interesting because very similar to the Rams, they can beat you in a million different ways, and they are more than willing to do that. One that I took was Jameson Williams receptions at 3.5. Williams has kind of exploded at the back end of the year here. I think anytime you have a defensive-minded coach and a true number one wide receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think you have to look at that secondary receiver because you know that Dan Quinn is good enough to to try and take away Amon-Ra. So now you could argue the game script isn't really there. Why would they be throwing a lot to Jameson Williams? I think he does get screens. He does get some short work. So I took his 3.5 if you're looking to attack there. Let's just take a quick look at DVOA here. Okay, so if we go to defensive DVOA, if you look at Washington's pass, let's see, they are 20th against the pass, so not great. Let's see if we can do the receiver matchup. So we go, let's see here. So against number one wide receivers, Washington is 22nd. Okay, not good. Against wide receiver number 2, they are 25th. Now, you may say, well, why wouldn't we go Amon-Ra St. Brown if that's the case? What is this not factoring in, ladies and gentlemen? What is this number right here, 22? What is that not factoring in? Anybody in the back? Marshawn Lattimore. Marshawn Lattimore, no, he was not good against Mike Evans, but we would assume a week of rust off and all of that. Lattimore against Amon-Ra St. Brown, this number would be nowhere near 22nd. So, but what that doesn't change is this, right? It doesn't change the rank against wide receiver 2, a la the rank against Jameson Williams. So if Marshawn Lattimore plays like how he's played in his entire career and not how he played against Tampa Bay, then that's even more of a reason to like the Jameson Williams. So if they're throwing the football, I like that. Now, another one that we had to pay attention to is against the tight ends. So Washington's horrible against tight ends. They are 32, 31. Let's see, 32, 31, 30, 29, 28, 27, 26. They're 26th against tight ends. Who's really good? Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta is a guy I like a lot. His yards specifically, because he is kind of an explosive tight end. He's not one of those tight ends where you're just hoping for like a 2, 3, 4 yard check down. Like, he is a guy running deep routes. He is a guy who can absolutely chunk you for, his longest reception is 20 yards. So I like his receiving yards. I wouldn't hate the idea of like laddering Laporta and just ladder him up however high you want to go. But I think he's a guy where if Goff has to throw, I think it makes sense that he throws a lot to Laporta. Washington plays a lot of man. Laporta is a absolute god against man. And the thing I would say about, like, well, if they're up, 2 scores, like, why would they be throwing to Sam Laporta? I think you factor in the total. If you think this game's going to be high scoring, which Vegas does, a total at 55.5, but if you think it's going to be high scoring, to me, that says, like, okay, they're going to have to keep throwing. Okay, they're going to have to keep scoring. Like, even if they win, even if they win something like 35-24, 35-23, 35-21, somewhere in there, that's still around the total. But if Detroit's going to get to 35 points, like, they're going to have to be throwing the football and moving the ball around. So it just makes sense to me that Laporta is the one that's getting a lot of this. So I love his yards. Receptions, I would rather his yards than his receptions. Could also look at a touchdown. I don't really mess with touchdowns too much. Maybe a first touchdown. Maybe that's the move. 10-1, 11-1. Always fun to sweat. But love Laporta there. As far as Washington, it seems like it's Terry McLaurin or bust as far as like them throwing the football. So if you want to just blindly say like, hey, he's going to be the guy, who else they're going to throw to, then you can go McLaurin there. But a lot of good props, a lot of good action in this one. If we take a look at real quick, the betting splits. Betting splits here, 57% of bets are on Houston, but 55% of the handles on KC. Washington and Detroit relatively split, but the handle is on Detroit. So most think Detroit wins this one easy. And then the total, overs are always public. So no surprise there. But good action on both. A lot of good player props. Lock it in. Get spicy. Let me know in the comments below what you're taking. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your day of football, and I will see you in the next video.